Hey everybody, it's Ed after a little bit of a hiatus. If you do a search for puppet video on YouTube, you're going to find a lot of videos about how to build puppets. You'll find some videos about people talking about the art of puppetry or why puppetry is important, a lot of things like that. But you're not going to find a lot of videos about what to do with puppets after they're created. Puppets are made to be performed. They are storytellers. They're performers. So after you have created the puppet, you need to use it to tell a story. So in this video, I'm going to give you about 3 guidelines of things to think of when you're creating a puppet script of your very own. Now, I own my own company called Runaway Puppet Theater. Check us out on the web at runawaytheater.com. Every summer for the past 11 years, we have created an original puppet production to go along with the summer reading program for libraries. So that means we have created 11 new shows over the years. This is a little bit of the process that I go through to create a new show every summer. Now, first of all, let me just give a little caveat that this is a way to create a puppet show, not the way to create a puppet show. This is what works for us. So the first thing you want to do to create a show, any kind of performance, is get very, very clear on the parameters of the show. And you start by thinking, who is this show going to be for? What is the audience that I'm going to be performing for? So what is the age of your audience? When we do summer reading programs at libraries, most of our audience is going to be younger kids, from anywhere from 4 to maybe 8 years old. If you're performing at a senior center, you might have a much older group. And so that needs to help inform what kind of references, what kind of show you put together. I can make all the Myrna Loy and Thin Man references I want to in the summer reading program. None of the kids are going to get it. Likewise, if I go to the senior center and I make a lot of Minecraft references, maybe not the audience that's really going to pick up on those clever Minecraft references. Also consider, does your audience have a certain common frame of reference? For example, are you going to be performing this show mostly in a specific geographical area? There might be certain common reference points that people in the Southeast would understand that people in the Northwest might not get. If you're going to be performing it for a group of people that are used to living on the coast, they might have a different common frame of reference than people who live in the center of the United States or anywhere that's landlocked. And also, what are the expectations of the audience that will be seeing your performance? A few years ago, I did a performance at a puppet slam. If you're not familiar, a puppet slam is usually short-form experimental puppetry that is done primarily for an adult audience. And I've only performed at one, and the piece I did was very family friendly, and it was met with polite acceptance because they were looking for something experimental or edgy, and it was at a convention, like a role-playing game convention, so I have a feeling they were probably a little bit inebriated, and they were looking for something honestly a little blue, which was not what I gave them. So they seemed to enjoy it, kind of, but it really wasn't what they were expecting. Now, if I do blue material for the summer library program, probably not going to be asked back. And is there a theme that you're writing for? The great thing about making a show for the summer library program is that there is a group called the Cooperative Summer Library Program. That's an organization, and every year they set a theme for that year's summer reading program. So I kind of write a new show, or base our new show, based on what their theme is going to be. One year it was about animal tales. One year was all about the ocean. One year was about space. One year was about hero tales. So that helps inform and guide me when I'm putting together my script for the summer. When you're putting together a show, there is a lot to be said for writing a brand new original show. But there's a lot to be said for adapting a very famous tale as well. One of my public relations professors in college always said, don't reinvent the wheel. And the same thing when you're creating a puppet show. There's a reason why classic tales like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or The Three Little Pigs or Red Riding Hood are still around. They work on a lot of different levels. So if you're adapting a story like Goldilocks or Red Riding Hood or Three Pigs and things like that, you probably already know the story, so that gives you a guide. You don't have to keep with the traditional story the way you know it exactly, but it does give you a guide. It gives you something to follow. You kind of know what the plot is. You know the beginning, you know the middle, you know kind of how you want it to end. You also know the characters already. In the Three Little Pigs, you probably are gonna have 3 pigs. Now, you don't have to have, but it'll help inform you, and you can make a conscious decision if you decide to change that somewhere. The other benefit of using a story that everyone already knows is that you set up expectations in the minds of your audiences. Now, that is great on two different levels. First of all, it helps fill in a lot of the exposition that you might need to do with dialogue or with set or something like that, because the people already understand what's going on. If you're doing Three Little Pigs, they're going to know that the pigs are going to want to build houses. If you're going to do Goldilocks, they're going to know that she's going to go to the bear's house and eat their stuff and tear up their furniture. The other benefit to using a story that people are already familiar with is you can play against those expectations, turn them around, and use that for comedic effect. For example, what if the three bears end up going in Goldilocks' house? That would create a different script. When we think of Snow White, we think of the young girl who has the very, very fair skin and the dark hair and the red, red lips. But what if she is like jacked? What if she is like muscles on muscles on muscles? And when she goes out into the woods with the woodsman and he tries to attack her with a knife, she just like pops him one. That's going to change the story quite a bit as well. So if your audience has a set of expectations and they think they know what this show is going to be because they recognize the title, when you adapt it, you can make it something kind of new and different just by changing and playing against some of those expectations. Another way you can take a familiar story and adapt it is taking a character from a different story and inserting it into your original story. For example, let's say Goldilocks is walking through the forest. Before she gets to the Three Bears' house, she meets a big bad wolf. How does that change the story? Or just brainstorm an out-of-the-blue oddball character. For example, Little Red Riding Hood. When the wolf is waiting for Little Red to come through the forest, maybe he finds a hot dog cart. Something else to consider is to lean heavily into archetypes. We all have these sets of archetypes we know from fairy tales and folk tales, and we have certain expectations of what kind of character they're going to be and how they're going to act in the story. If you think of a king, that sets up a certain set of expectations. If you think of a princess, that sets up a certain set of expectations. You think you know how this character is going to react and what role they're going to play in the story. Likewise, if you have a witch, that will kind of inform people. They have an expectation of what that character is going to do, what they're going to be like, who are they in this story. Same thing if you have a knight or a troll or even something innocuous like a little fuzzy bunny. Again, using those archetypes helps you with a lot of exposition that you don't have to verbally explain or just act out in the show. When you see the princess or the knight or the witch or the troll, you kind of know what role, or you have an idea what kind of role they're going to fulfill. Well, what if the troll is the hero of the story? That takes the archetype and kind of twists it around. What if the princess is the villain? What if she's the bad guy all along? You can also do something simple, like changing the character's role, but have them fulfill the same function in the story. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you an example the way we did it one time. We were performing the show The Three Little Pigs. Well, we changed our big bad wolf's role to that of a building inspector. So the wolf still showed up at the pigs' houses, and they were a little nervous, but for an entirely different reason. And our wolf was dressed in a suit. He had a clipboard, and he would check off if the building was up to code. So the wolf would ask something like, is your straw house like flame-proof? And the pig would say, well, no, but I have installed a sprinkler system. And so the wolf would check that off. And he would say, how's it rated against earthquakes? And the pig would say, oh, it's very flexible. Will withstand a 7.2 earthquake on the Richter scale. And he would check that off. And he would say, well, is it proof? Can it withstand hurricanes? And the pig would say, well, I'm not sure. And the wolf would say, well, luckily I can test it for you. And so he would huff and puff and blow the straw house down. So we wanted the same thing to happen in the story. But since the wolf was a building inspector, he would tell the pig, well, I'm sorry, I can't approve your house. It is not up to code. And in the terms of your mortgage, since your house is not up to hurricanes, I now get to eat you. And that's kind of how we changed the role of the character, but he still fulfilled the same function in the entire story. So that's just a few guidelines, a few ideas to think about when you're putting together a puppet show of your own. And I would still call this an original show. You're going to take that classic tale, even if you're doing an adaptation, and you're going to twist it, change it, stretch it, and make it your own. When it's done, it might really not even be recognizable from what the original story was. And I think that's okay. Now, if you want to see a video of actually how I would do this, some more in-depth points of what I think of when I'm putting together a show, or actually like an over-the-shoulder, this is how I do it, let me know in the comments. Happy to do that. In fact, this video has reminded me it is time for me to start working on my new summer reading program show. So,